for December 3rd, 2019. If you all stand and salute the flag, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Damien.
Adequate notice of this meeting at the Old Bridge Township Planning Board has been provided in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act at least 48 hours prior to the commencement of the meeting by prominently posting in the municipal complex an announcement giving the time, date, location, and agenda of this meeting, mailing such announcement to the Home News and Tribune, and filing a copy of such announcement with the municipal clerk.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Abbas?
Here.
Mr. Lauer?
Here.
Mr. Marucci?
Here.
Mr. Schmidt?
Here.
Mr. Lenny?
Here.
Mr. Pink?
Here.
Mr. Renner?
Here.
Chairwoman Kent?
Here.
Ms. Carey?
Present.
Ms. Sawant?
Here.
Ms. Shapiro?
Here.
Mr. Darden? Present. Ms. Drum?
Here.
Mr. LaCalla? Mr. Hart?
Okay, thank you. I just want to remind everybody we're on television and we will be on till 10 o'clock. So that doesn't necessarily mean the meeting will be over by then, but the cameras will be shut down at that time. So I just want to go over some of the procedures. I just want to remind everybody that this is a judicial process, that we have this transcript that has to be taken and it has to be clear and get all the information. So I would just urge all of you to not try to talk over each other, and when you come up to talk, to give your name and address. And what we're going to do to try to make it more efficient, we have a couple of small things before we get to the Foxborough, but or RD management. After we get testimony from the witnesses, if you just want to speak then, and if you have a question regarding the testimony or you want to clarification of the testimony, to do that. At the end, when all of the testimony has been given, you will be welcome to come up and give your opinions and state your likes or dislikes, as long as you keep it to the application. So we're going to start with a report from the Minor Subdivision Committee.
We met with the applicant, and the applicant proposes to remove all the old existing structures on Lot 138, located on Raritan Boulevard, and divide the lot into two conforming 5,000 square foot lots in the R5 zone. It is proposed to build a two-story family dwelling on each of the new lots. The applicant agrees to comply with all the comments of the November 27th Planning and Engineering Review. The committee recommends approval of the application.
Okay, do we have a motion to approve the minor subdivision?
I'll move it.
I'll second
Okay, moved by Mr. Bernie and Mr. Marucci. Roll call, please.
Mr. Abbas?
Yes.
Mr. Lau?
Yes.
Mr. Marucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schmidt?
Yes.
Mr. Lenny?
Yes.
Mr. Pink?
Yes.
Mr. Renner?
Yes.
Chairwoman Kent?
Yes. Thank you. Okay, and then we're going to do the 18-19P K Havnavian at Old Bridge, Block 13326, Lot 1, minor subdivision with C variances.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board, and your professional staff and members of the public. My name is Peter Klauser. I'm an attorney with the firm Heilbrunn Pape. This evening, I have the pleasure of representing K. Havnavian at Old Bridge LLC with regard to this minor subdivision. This is a property that is part of the Oakwood development, and we're getting set up. As part of the Oakwood development, the development of these surrounding communities were all part at one point in history of a settlement agreement between the developers and the township. That history is outlined in good detail in your engineering and planning report. As part of those approvals and permits, K. Vanadian has an obligation to provide some recreation areas for the communities, which recreation areas are supposed to be and will be dedicated to the township. Under the stipulations of settlement, this particular lot in this section 10, which contains a detention basin and an existing recreational area, is permitted to be subdivided, and the subdivided portion of the recreation area is permitted to be provided to the township to satisfy that recreation area. So that's what we're here for this evening, is to create the minor subdivision. The other portion of the lot that will remain contains a detention basin serving the surrounding communities. The detention basin will become the responsibility of a homeowners association that's part of one of the communities. And as I stated, the recreation area becomes part of is offered to the township for dedication. As part of the application this evening, there are no improvements that are proposed. The detention basin has long been in place, and the recreation area is in place. However, the detention basin will become landlocked behind the recreation area. So as a result of that, we have two technical variances because we do not have frontage for that lot on an improved street. Even though there will be no development on the lot, there'll be no house built on that lot or any houses built on that lot. I call to your attention those two technical variances. There are some conditions in your professional reports, which we will go over later, which I think satisfy the proofs necessary for those variances, in that we'll agree that there'll be no future development on those lots, and that access to that lot will be provided over the recreation area before same is dedicated to the township. I have one witness this evening, Jarka Vonder. She's the professional land surveyor that's responsible for the plan that was presented to you as part of this application. I would ask if Ms. Vonder could be sworn, and we'll place her credentials on the record. I'd like to bring that over to you.
Raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Please state and spell your name for the record.
Aarolslava, Vonder, V for Victor, Onder.
Ms. Vonder, if you could share with the board your educational background and your professional licensure.
Yes. My initial education, I graduated from college in Prague, Czech Republic, from land surveying, and I obtained an MBA from Fairleigh Dickinson University in Madison, New Jersey. I am licensed professional in New Jersey, New York, and Connecticut.
And have you testified before other boards in the state of New Jersey before in your capacity as a professional land surveyor?
Yes, I have.
You
Okay,
have
thank you.
Thank you. You have prepared an exhibit for the board this evening that looks like it's part of your subdivision plan that you've highlighted. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So if we could mark that, we start at A1. And for the record, if you could just describe what it is that A1 is that I just marked into the record.
It's the existing lot 1 in block 13326. It's frontage on the Trans-Old Bridge Road. The property is approximately 5.027 acres, which consists with the recreation areas on the southern portion and a detention basin on the north portion.
And I stated earlier that the applicant proposes to subdivide this lot. Is that accurate?
That's correct.
And if you could describe for the board what the resulting lots, what their sizes will be and what will be located on those lots.
Right. Lot 111, which is the southern portion of property, it's 2.109 acres. Property north of that 1.12 lot is 2.918 acres. The property is in low-medium density residential zone R20, where minimum lot line is approximately 0.459 acres, so we are well over that.
And Lot 1.11 will continue to have frontage on Trans Old Bridge Road, is that correct?
That's correct.
And that will contain the recreational amenities.
Yes, that's correct.
And as we get to the report later, but while we're talking about it, that access, the access to the rear lot will be provided over Lot 1.11 as part of the deed conveying same to the township.
That's correct.
And then the rear lot will contain the existing basin, and that will remain in the same condition.
That's correct.
And there are no other improvements that are proposed as part of this
No.
application.
No.
If I could, I'd like to take a look at, with you, the November 27th report that was prepared by Ms. Shapiro and Ms. Swat. And I want to jump ahead, most of it is history, to Section J of the report. And there are a number of questions that are identified in that report, Madam Chair, that we're prepared to answer. Comment all under Section J. Comment number 1 identifies the variance relief, the lack of lot frontage and the lack of width at a roadway. So those are variances that the applicant is requesting as part of this application. Is that correct?
That's correct.
With regard to some of those variances, Section 2 under J, item number 2, asks that the applicant create access to the rear lot over Lot 1.11, which is to be dedicated to the township prior to the dedication, and we will do that as part of that.
That's correct.
So that provides access to that landlocked lot to the HOA for future maintenance, should same be necessary. Item number 3 asks that the lots be restricted to their present uses in perpetuity, so that the detention basin lot remains as a detention basin lot and the recreation remains as recreation. We have no objection to that as a condition of approval, and if you would like it to be included in the deeds when the subdivision is created, should this board grant that approval. Comment 4 identifies a punch list that was created for the tot lot. And it's a number of items that are to be completed before the tot lot is turned over to the township, or the recreation lot is turned over to the township. We would agree to all of the punch list items to the extent that they're consistent with the previously approved plans. We will complete them to the satisfaction of your engineer. I would ask that it just be clarified in the resolution, and if it's acceptable to the board and your professionals, that the completion of that punch list be contingent upon the conveyance of that lot to the township, not the perfection of the minor subdivision. So I can create the lots, perfect the subdivision, but before your council accepts that lot, all of those punch list items have to be accepted. That way we can actually create the lot and present it to the council. Otherwise, it creates a little bit of a catch-22 for us. Comment 5 deals with providing meets and bounds descriptions for both of the lots. Of course, we will provide those for your review, your professionals' review, and the township attorney's review. Item 6 goes back in history. What the lot was, the detention basin was built, and there was some discussion of the township taking over the detention basin. Your engineering department made it clear that unless the detention basin was built to specific standards, which the township finds acceptable, they would not accept it. But that the HOA could take it in its existing condition. We understand that. We're not going to offer the basin to the township. The HOA will take over the basin. So that's a condition that's pointed out in the report. We accept it and have no issue with it, and we have the authority to do that. Item J7 calls out a number of statutory certifications that are to be included on the plat. And we can include all of those on a plat for review by your professional staff. Specifically, item 7F deals with monuments to be placed out on the roadway along the existing line, and the applicant will also do that. Comment J8 deals with the outside agency approvals. As there is no development on the property proposed, the only outside agency approval that's part of this is the Middlesex County Planning Board, and we secured a waiver from the Planning Board already. They found that they had jurisdiction, but because we don't contribute materially to a downstream structure, they waived their jurisdiction. So I think we're finished with our outside agency approvals. This is a minor subdivision intended to be consistent with a settlement agreement with the township and to comply with commitments that this applicant previously made to the township to dedicate a recreational facility, but without burdening the township with a basin. That's your applicant's direct presentation. I have no further questions of Ms. Vonder. We're available for your professionals' questions and for this matter to be open to the public.
Okay. Ms. Shapiro?
Madam Chairwoman, I think it was important to go back and write out the history on this project. I wasn't here during the development of the Oakwoods property, but I think it's important for the board to know why we're taking over the recreational area, and that's why I took the time out to sort of briefly to explain what has happened. And Mr. Clauser is right. There was a settlement agreement. K. Havanian was the contract purchaser from Kaplan at the time to complete the Oakwoods development. And so what happened in that completion, they came in front of our board and they were seeking an amended GDP, and also they were seeking, I think it was, they sought to construct or a subdivision approval for 125 single-family lots and 300 multifamily units. That application was denied, and subsequently there was litigation, and then there was a settlement in May of 2002. And in that settlement agreement, it talks specifically about this lot. Mr. Clauser is correct in that one of the stipulations, and I actually point out in that history write-up the exact page of that stipulation where it says we're supposed to take over the recreational component and only the detention basin or the stormwater management facility if it meets that slope criteria, which it doesn't. And the revisions to that basin, it cannot create that requirement for that slope. So with that said, then there's a subdivision. The subdivision would then require the HOA to, or the settlement agreement would require the HOA to take over the detention basin, and then the recreation area would be ours. And then this, with this information, this is probably one of the final pieces for K. Havanian to get release of the performance guarantee in front of our council. So I agree that the punch list items can be done prior to acceptance from our council and not as a stipulation of perfecting the subdivision. And I'm happy to hear that all the items for the recreation area will be taken care of, subject to that they were on the approved plans, subject that they were on the approved plans, although I don't think you're going to see missing bolts or broken module components on that approved plans, but I'm sure we could work it out with the applicant.
Okay. So the tot lot or whatever's in the recreation area will be owned by the town? It will be a public facility?
It will be owned by the town. It is part of the recreational component of this development, but yes, it would be public property, so technically
Would be open to
anybody.
the public.
Anybody can come to it.
Okay.
And then our recreation department had gone out and taken a look at a safety perspective at the property to see what needed to be upgraded prior to us accepting it. A report was issued in 2015, but since then, nothing had occurred from that punch list, and a new punch list has been written up, which actually almost mimics some of the items in that 2015 report from our recreation department, but just adds on to it. So I would actually add, and part of your packet contains the January 8th, 2015 recreation deficiencies, as well as the new November 24, 2019 deficiencies found by our recreation department, many of which those items overlap, but I ask that any additional items that are found on the 2015 that are not duplicated on the 2019 report gets done as well.
Okay. The only thing I would request that be made in any prospectus for homeowners, that this is a public facility and open to the public, so they don't think it's just, owned by the homeowners association or...
You mean for future sales of?
Yeah, for
properties?
future, yeah.
Right. I don't know how we would do that.
I don't know. I mean, I think it's something to consider to,
I mean,
them
certainly,
aware.
certainly during the acceptance at our council meeting, when we do accept it, we could make note of it, and that is televised, and it is a public forum where we could, make the residents aware at that time.
Yeah,
Is there a park sign
Yeah,
that
a
says-
Some
sign
signage
or
to the
so-
entrance, or?
I can certainly talk to our recreation department and see what we could do as far as signage.
yeah,
That's
so
a good
people are aware that it's. And the only other thing is that if the homeowners association is going to maintain the detention basin,
Yes.
so, that's always been a problem.
Well, it's actually spelt out in the stipulation of settlement that was dated May 2002 that the HOA take over that basin.
Okay.
The only time that we ever take over a basin is if we could bring that, or if the HOA at the time can bring an existing detention basin to current code. It's already agreed that just the side slopes alone of that basin can't be brought up to current code. Therefore, in the future, should somebody, maybe after Vina and I retire, take a look at the basin, they would see it wouldn't be conforming, and then at that time as well would say that we wouldn't be able to take it over should that HOA come to us in the future.
When was the basin built?
Sometime between 80s or 90s.
Who's been maintaining it since?
Kay Havanian, the developer.
Hasn't been any issues with that, I'm assuming.
I don't think so.
Not that we're aware of. No, we have no issue with the HOA maintaining the basin in the future. I think actually it's pretty much settled law as far as this development was concerned. That we're here more to affect the
Yeah,
giving
I
of the
just know that-
recreation to the town.
Historically, it's been an issue because they're not always taken care of, and then they come to the town and want the town to take over, and then it involves a lot of expense to fix it up to be, taken care of. Anyway, Vina, do you have anything? Okay. All right, anybody on the board? Yes, Mr. Lauer.
Last week, I made a site inspection on the recreation area, and on the northeasterly side of the parking lot, there was an inlet that looked like it had a 30, maybe 36-inch concrete pipe coming from the outlet structure on the detention basin. Looked like it was coming from the detention basin. My question is, shouldn't there be an easement going across the township's property to show that the pipe's there?
You're talking about in the northeast corner of the tot lot?
Yes, the parking lot.
Okay. Well, I don't, there are OBMUA easements that are shown on the plan right now.
Right, that's for sewer.
Well, there's going to be an access easement, a blanket access easement over the lot that's dedicated to the township
I understand that.
flowing back there. I'm not sure I understand the concern.
Well, there's a concrete pipe going from the tot lot parking lot to the outlet structure. If there's a problem with it, and they have to get to the pipe. I'm
you're-
just asking, maybe it's for our professional.
Perhaps I'm speaking out of turn, yeah. I'm not seeing it on the plan that we have
I mean,
here.
it looked to be a fairly large pipe, and it looked like it was coming from that direction of the outlet structure on the detention area.
So, Mr. Lauer, so you're saying that the northeast corner, which if you're looking at the plan, which I think we marked as A1, it is the upper right-hand corner of the the area marked as paved parking area. Is
Yes,
that the upper
the-
right-hand corner?
Yes, the northeast, it would, if you're looking at straight up, it would be the most northerly side.
Okay, can I ask, when you were doing your visual inspection, are you saying that there was something wrong with the inlet or the pipe?
No,
Okay, anything within that recreational component, any drainage pipes, et cetera, would be then the responsibility of the township.
right.
So we wouldn't need an easement because we would own this piece of property.
Okay, you wouldn't need to even though it goes to the detention area.
Okay, I had one of our engineers in our department go out there, and for what I remember, I thought it went towards Trans Old Bridge. But what I can do is I could see if that enters that detention basin. But no, we wouldn't need an easement.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Thank you. Sorry, I didn't.
You,
Okay, anyone else have any questions? Okay, I'll open it to the public. Does anyone from the public have any comments or questions regarding this application? Seeing no hands, we'll close the public portion. Okay, did you have a summary or?
I do. As I stated, this was part of a past settlement, part of a historic development on the site that's an established community. We're here tonight to effect the purposes of that settlement and be able to create a lot that is that we can dedicate to the township for the recreational purposes and not burden the township with the basin lot.
All right, do I have a motion?
I'll move it.
Okay, moved by Mr. Marucci. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Mr. Schmidt. Roll call, please.
Mr. Bowles?
Yes.
Mr. Lau?
yes.
Mr. Marucci?
Yes.
Mr. Schmidt?
Yes.
Mr. Lanning?
Yes.
Mr. Pate?
Yes.
Mr. Ren?
Yes.
Chairwoman Cannon?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Do you need a minute? We're going to take a couple minutes while the stenographer changes her tape.
Thanks for moving the schedule around. Appreciate it.
Thirty-eight 18P RD Management Corp., Block 16004, Lot 53, preliminary and final major site plan. Mr. Pate.
Good evening, Madam Chairwoman, board members, board professionals, and public. My name is Kenneth Pape. I'm with the firm of Heilbron Pape, and it's my responsibility this evening to represent RD Management. This is a continued public hearing on an application for preliminary and final site plan approval. Before we begin a substantive presentation, we did renotice and republish for this evening's hearing. The last time the board heard this was on October 1st. We were carried to October 29th and then carried to tonight with the requirement of renotice and republication. And if you'd be so kind as to confirm receipt of the notices and confirm that they're in order for this evening.
Yes, we did receive and review this, thank you.
Thank you. This is a request for preliminary and final major site plan approval to construct two separate facilities, a convenience store with gas and a retail building. When we were before the board in October, we had made substantial revisions to the plan and presented those revisions. When we left the board, we scheduled a meeting with all of the board's professionals, and that took place in October. And as indicated in Ms. Sawant's report, there was a preparation of a detailed list of revisions that the professionals were looking to be incorporated into the plan. This evening, we intend to go through the revisions to the plans that were made and to what points we were responding. There was one point that was requested that the applicant has not done, and that is to move the two buildings to in opposite positions. The applicant has, as the developer of the property and with the expertise of developing the property, has the right to choose the location of those buildings, and the locations that are chosen are the ones that match what the market conditions require. So there is nothing in your ordinances that dictate the juxtaposition of those buildings, so those revisions were not made. The revisions that were made included the revision that was first introduced to the board at the April meeting, At the April meeting, there was considerable concern from the board, the board's professionals, and the public as to the means of ingress and egress to the site. We began by reporting that we had gone to the Department of Transportation, and the Department of Transportation was not willing to allow the type of ingress and egress that was suggested and discussed by the board. Your traffic expert, Deanna Drum, indicated that she thought there was a way that we could make those revisions and assisted us in setting up meetings with the Department of Transportation, and a revision was made so that the ingress to the site is now off of Route 18, and the means of ingress has been located in a location that was favored by Ms. Drum and the other board professionals. And sitting alongside of me is John Ray, who is our traffic engineer. I'd like to begin the meeting by sharing with you how far we have gotten with the Department of Transportation. It appears that we may have gotten to the point where they're going to allow us this alternative means of ingress and egress. So John Ray is our traffic expert. His testimony was previously started. His credentials are on the record, and I remind him that he's under oath. And with that, I'd ask if I could begin examining Mr. Ray. Mr. Ray, the Department of Transportation did in fact receive an application prepared by Chester Plousis, Lasowski's offices, and yours for modification of the driveways on this site?
Yes, it was a concept application because we agreed when we had the pre-application meeting with the DOT that we would prepare a concept drawing, submit it to them, and they would have their geometric unit review the access plan and get back to us with any comments. But that plan was submitted to the DOT.
What was missing from our original plan was a method of egress from our client's property out onto Route 18. Is that correct?
Yeah, just to refresh everyone's memory, when we first came before the board, the original plan that we had only an ingress, from northbound Route 18. The reason why we proposed that was because years ago there was an approval on the property, and the DOT did approve an ingress only for the office complex that was previously approved, I believe back in the 1980s, the mid to late 80s, that was approved. And so the DOT wanted us to basically go along with the existing, what the existing approval for the property had been years ago. Subsequent to that, we had the meetings, and as Mr. Pape said, your consultant, Deanna Drum, indicated that she thought we may be able to have a method of going back to DOT and getting an egress to Route 18, and that's where we are today.
And since making that submission, have you received positive comments from the Department of Transportation?
I do believe they are positive. We have received an initial review from the DOT, from their geometric unit, and they have some very minor comments, in my opinion. They want some additional details added to the plan with respect to striping and lane and shoulder widths, things of that, dimensioning certain things. So between Mr. Pucci's office, who's the site engineer, and myself, we will comply with the DOT's request for those items, which I believe are minimal, and we will resubmit.
So the revision, the application was filed with the DOT. The DOT has indicated that their comments, and they are dimensional comments, and your testimony is that you as the traffic engineer and working with Michael Pucci, the design engineer, will comply with those requests.
We will, but I do want to make it clear, it is not yet a formal NJDOT access permit application. It is a concept application to get the geometry of the driveway, the location of the driveway, to get it set, to get it be acceptable to the NJDOT, and then a formal application will be made.
You just described the procedures of how we do an application at the DOT.
That's correct.
The commitment of your applicant is that they will continue to pursue that alternative means of ingress and egress, and that we recognize that the plan that we present to you is dependent on that means of ingress and egress being achieved. We have a new report generated by Ms. Drum. It appears to me to be primarily a technical report. I've asked that you review it before the meeting, and I've asked Mr. Pucci to review it before the meeting. Do you have any issues advising the board that, working with Mr. Pucci and Ms. Drum, that you can and will comply with the technical requests that are made by Ms. Drum?
We will comply with all of the items in Deanna's review letter. They are primarily site plan related with respect to details on signage and striping, and we will comply with everything in her review letter.
Remind you that when you were here the last time, we went through parking and circulation. We were asked to generate templates showing the turning movements throughout the site, and those have been submitted. Your applicant has reduced the size of the retail building by about 10%, and the parking has remained as it was previously. May I ask that you confirm your testimony that the parking is more than adequate for the proposed uses that the applicant?
It is, and Mr. Pucci will go over some of those details, but the retail buildings have been reduced from 32,000 square feet to, I believe, 29,160 square feet. So, and that was primarily to increase the buffers, and the parking supply remains the same. And since my testimony was that the 32,000 square feet of retail space was going to be, we were going to provide adequate parking for that amount of retail, certainly the same holds true for 10% less retail space. We will have more than adequate parking.
One of Ms. Drum's comments was to remove 3 parking spaces and green up a portion of the parking lot. Losing 3 parking spaces doesn't change your testimony.
No, we can do that, and we can still comply, yes.
And all of your testimony with regard to on-site circulation, the circulation has not changed. So I assume all of your comments remain valid for the plan before the board this evening.
They do, and as I've indicated, there have been some more substantial changes to the plan that have been made by Mr. Pucci. I believe they are all beneficial. He will get into them in a few minutes. And I've reviewed that plan, and I find myself that the changes have been beneficial. The site circulation plan essentially remains the same. However, we've made the site plan a little bit more conducive to having the truck circulation be the way we want it to be, and to have people use the Route 18 access rather than Foxborough Drive, and to get maximum benefit out of the egress to Route 18.
I have nothing further of Mr. Ray. I do have a copy of the DOT communication in which the dimensional requests are memorialized. It was issued on October 8th, 2019, and it was issued over the signature of Mina Yusuf, and I am prepared to submit a copy for the... Terrific. A5 is an October 8th DOT. Madam Chair, Council, I look to you for procedure. We have 3 professional witnesses. John Ray is the first, and my direct examination of Mr. Ray is concluded. Look to you for procedure. Do you wish to examine each of the witnesses after their testimony, or do you wish to do
Yeah,
examination?
well, I think we'll try to group them, but I'd like the professionals to comment.
Great. I will follow your guidance.
Rob?
Regard to Mr. Ray's testimony, I don't have any further questions or comments.
Okay. Dina, do you have any? No?
I have nothing for Mr. Ray.
Okay. Is anybody from the, yes, Mr. Lauer?
Mr. Ray, you said there was no change to the circulation since the last meeting? Is that-
Well,
is that
essentially, yes, the convenience store remains where it is, the retail building remains where it is, the circulation, the aisles, things of that nature.
Because on the previous plans, it showed the circulation behind the buildings to be one-way, and on your new plans, it shows to be both ways.
Correct.
That's a change, right?
It is a change, you're right.
Okay,
That was-
thank you.
And that was asked of us at the last meeting. We agreed to incorporate it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for bringing that up and reminding me.
Okay, does anybody else from the board? Yes.
I do.
Mr. Marucci?
If my memory serves me correctly, at the last meeting, we discussed the egress onto Foxborough Drive being limited in some way for truck
Yes,
traffic.
Correct.
Has that been addressed?
That has been addressed. We want Mr. Pucci will get up, a truck turning plan has been submitted. that shows the path that the delivery trucks can take to get back to the Route 18 egress. There will be signage, and the plan has been designed so the radii are acceptable for the trucks to make those turning movements. We don't want them going out on Foxborough Drive.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, I will open this up to the public since it involves the traffic component. So if anyone has any questions regarding the witness, if you'd give your name and.
Good evening, my name is William A. Miller. I'm the attorney for Foxborough Village Homeowners Association.
One second, sir. Microphone's on?
Oops.
All right, Mr. Ray, as you know, the Foxborough community is very concerned about truck traffic as well as other traffic on Foxborough Drive. According to the plans that I see up there, there's no limitation as to access for any of the vehicles on Foxborough Drive. How are you going to prevent commercial vehicles from leaving the development onto Foxborough Drive?
Well, I believe when Mr. Pucci gets up to testify with respect to some of the changes we've made as far as signage is concerned, he'll go over those details with you.
Then you're saying that the only limitation would be signage? There's no other type of limitation such as a bump or some type of barrier so that only cars can go through and not commercial vehicles?
It is, from my review of the plan, it is signage, unless Mr. Pucci wants to correct me. I think it is signage that will direct the trucks back to Route 18.
All right, but there's not going to be any type of traffic control device at that location then, is there?
Traffic control device in terms, I'm not sure what you're referring to.
Is there any mechanism so that no one's going to be there for 24 hours a day looking at this particular access point? So if a commercial vehicle wants to exit on the Foxborough Drive, how is that going to be prevented? That's the location where the school buses as well as the residential traffic from the development go through on a regular basis.
I understand. And the trucks will be directed through signage, and the proper radii have been provided on the plan to redirect them to the Route 18 egress.
All right, understood. Thank you. I have no further questions for the
Okay.
witness at this time.
Thank you.
But I do know that I don't represent the individual unit owners, especially the Stone Ridge unit owners, so I believe they may have some questions as well.
We discussed some type of height barrier? To limit.
Yes, and Mike, I don't believe there's any kind of a height barrier bar on the plan. Am I correct?
Okay,
We did not do that.
your name and address, please.
Stephen Backman, 17 Stone Ridge Road in Old Bridge. Stephen Backman, Backman. Quite honestly, it's an unacceptable answer, especially since one of the board members had asked for, it was previously discussed about having a physical barrier. There is no way that a signage control is going to eliminate the truck traffic onto Foxborough Drive. And to follow up on that, the last time, I can't see quite well from here, but you have one lane of egress or egress from Route 18 onto Route 18, is that correct?
That's correct.
And you have 2 lanes of egress onto Foxborough Drive, is that correct?
Mr. Pucci, is that still 2 lanes going out to Foxborough Drive on the revised plan? Because I think what we're looking at is the old plan.
Like one in and one out.
Yeah. I think we still have that on the revised plan, if I'm not mistaken. The revised plan, which I don't think is being shown right now because we haven't entered it into evidence yet, the revised plan that has the lower number of square footage of retail, I believe it's still, it is. We have, okay, then it's 2 lanes.
Okay, so that contradicts your testimony that you are doing everything in your power to reduce the truck traffic onto Foxborough Drive. Because if you wanted the truck traffic to exit, the more appropriate way or access would be onto Route 18, not onto a street where we already are having issues of truck traffic as it is.
If I may, this is the examination of Mr. Ray on the
Yeah.
testimony that he just placed before the board, and
We're-
it's not the opportunity
If you
to
can
advance
just,
a
well, I
separate
think he
argument.
can express an opinion
During examination? I believe that comes at the end, Madam
regarding
Chair.
the testimony, yeah.
That's, it's your board, Madam Chair. That's
But-
not the law as I understand it.
We're not going to argue it at this point.
I
Okay.
think I can respond in about 15 seconds. The reason why there are 2 lanes coming out to Foxborough Drive is so that we can have, Foxborough Drive is a 2-way roadway. You can make either a left or a right, so we want to make sure that we have 2 separate lanes, one for left turns, one for rights. The reason why we have a single lane going out to Route 18 is you can only make a right turn. You can only go in one direction.
Understand.
So we don't need a 2-lane exit out to Route 18.
Understand, providing the size of the vehicle can make that left turn onto Foxborough Drive, which is not possible. You had testified previously that you have a, for lack of a better term, a traffic route within your development there, okay? And if I understand it correctly, it is kind of, again, for lack of a better term, a lane of traffic to go around so the traffic could be directed back onto Route 18. Is that correct?
That is correct, and you'll get more details from Mr. Pucci when he testifies. Yes.
Okay, so then there was no change then to the, and correct me if I'm wrong, please, there's no change to where the trucks to refuel the gas station tanks has to park while they're refueling, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so that still remains a blockage to the traffic going through while they're fueling.
I disagree.
You said there's one lane. The truck has to park over the tanks to refill it.
That is correct.
You have the tanks right in the lane of traffic.
Correct. And the truck is there for about 20 minutes, dropping the fuel, and those parking spaces that are behind the truck, we indicated at the last meeting, we'll designate for employees.
Okay, and you want to be there in the case of an emergency, waiting for the truck to finish unloading, or the police, or the fire, or anybody that has to get through.
Sir, all I can tell
Thank
you,
you.
this is a pretty
Okay.
standard design that's been
I
put
don't
into
think
place.
it's, I don't want to debate it because
You're suggesting there may be an issue, and that's something that they have to
it
look
is,
at.
it is absolutely an issue. There's several issues regarding that.
Okay.
And we brought it up several
Also, just keep in mind
times,
that we
it
have
hasn't been
someone else
addressed.
that is going to be addressing some of these issues.
Well, I just disagree with his conclusion.
Yeah,
This
no,
this
that's-
is a design that's been put forth, it's out there in the field in numerous
Okay,
locations.
but
It
he's- he
operates-
has a
Doesn't
right
mean
to-
it, doesn't mean it's
operates fine.
right for every situation.
All right.
Now, the next thing is you had said that you, if I might quote, at the risk of quoting, that you're not looking for truck traffic. Is that correct?
I don't think I ever made that quote. We have to
Okay,
have
then
trucks make
correct me.
deliveries.
Okay,
I'm probably going to have to.
okay. So you have the ability, so in other words, what you're saying is that the property will accept truck traffic. Is that correct?
Of course, yes.
Okay. And you have, through your traffic design, that the general assumption is you're planning on that traffic circle to work have them exit onto Route 18.
Yes, we want the trucks to exit onto Route 18.
Okay.
I think if you listen to Mr. Pucci's testimony, he's going to go over those things in a little bit more detail again, because, some changes have been made to the plan, and a truck turning plan has been submitted by Mr. Pucci,
Okay.
reviewed by the board's professionals, and we can get into that in a little bit more detail when he testifies.
Fine. Okay, but my next question is that you had testified that the number of parking spaces is immaterial, but you testified that you have enough parking spaces to comply with the local laws and requirements and so forth.
That is
You
correct.
also testified that there's no truck parking. So my question to you is, where are you going to have the trucks park when they come to attend to the required landscaping?
You have to be a little bit more, you mean landscaping trucks that come to take care?
Well, I'll be very specific.
Be specific.
There is a fair amount of landscaping that you will be doing that has to be maintained. So when they come to maintain the landscaping, where will the trucks park? With their trailers and their equipment?
They'll come during the middle of the day when the parking lot is half empty, and they'll use 2 or 3 and they'll use several parking
All right,
spaces,
quiet.
just as is the practice in other shopping centers.
If that's your answer, so be it.
My answer.
Okay. I'm a little
All right. How are
blown
we
away
doing?
with that. The other thing is, so now where is the parking provisions for the delivery trucks?
Well, there are several locations for the fuel delivery truck. I'm going to indicate it's to the side of the
Yeah,
north
that's
side
right
of
in the flow of
canopy.
traffic, which we addressed before.
And then there's, and Mr. Pucci can talk about it in more detail. We kind of flipped the loading zone for the other delivery truck behind the convenience store. He can go over that in a little bit more detail. And then, of course, behind the building itself, the retail building itself.
But isn't that area behind the building part of the traffic flow?
Yes.
Okay, in order for the trucks to get back out onto Route 18? So now you have a gas delivery truck, the guy delivering Twinkies, the guy delivering Oreos, the soda guy, everybody delivers. I'm not so sure that they will all coordinate the deliveries to be at different times. So you have potentially a traffic jam created in there and a fire hazard and all kinds of hazards to be created by the backup of truck deliveries, which has to happen every day.
John, in the back of the building, you've got 2 lanes of traffic, one in each direction.
Right.
And a separate loading area.
That is correct.
So all 3 of those are shown on that plan. The loading area is not in the travel way.
That is correct.
Thank you.
There's 2 separate lanes for traffic, and there is a loading zone. And if you look at this and some of the other strip centers that you may be familiar with in Old Bridge, like Renaissance Plaza on Route, I think it's on Route 9, just north of Spring Valley Road, very similar design. And it works fine.
Okay, I'm thinking of the Wawa that was constructed, and they have huge traffic problems, and they have trucks that park out on 18 that create traffic hazards, and I'm concerned about the issue further up on Route 9 in front of the Home Depot where there's I forget what the coffee place or whatever it is. Sorry? Dunkin' Donuts, and the trucks are continually parked on Route 9 on the shoulder. Police can't get through. They're blocking the view of the people exiting, and there are consistent accidents there. So your plan does not allow for that traffic to come into your shopping center.
I couldn't disagree with you more.
Well, there's no parking. I mean, I'm waiting for you to show me where they can
We're not
park.
going to get into an
The
argument.
loading zone behind the retail building, which is clearly shown on the plan that's on, right up in front of you. And there's a 2-way traffic aisle behind.
And the gentleman that is driving his delivery truck that has no deliveries for that location, who wants to stop off for a cup of coffee and a bag of donuts, where is he going to park?
That's a different question. You're all over the place, sir, and I'm trying to
Well, I
answer your
am,
question.
because you're all over the place.
All right, are you done now? Because I think when this other fellow
I'm
talked-
trying to keep to
No, I
the
know,
questions
I know
as you
you're moving it,
request.
but I
But it's
think he
very
might be able to
difficult when you get
clarify some
answers
of the
like
things.
this. I just have a couple of other questions, I believe, here. And I'll leave the rest of the comments for the proper time at the
Okay.
end. Actually, I'm done.
Okay.
Actually, I'm done, but
All
thank
right.
you.
Thank you. Okay, I think it would be good if we get the next witness up before we take any more comments from the audience, because it might clarify or shed some light on some of
I
these
think
things.
you're right.
Thank you.
Okay.
Madam Chair, members of the board, Michael Pucci is our design engineer. I'll ask if he comes forward. And Mr. Pucci's credentials were made part of the record. He was accepted as an expert in his field, and he is under oath, and I remind Mr. Pucci that he's under oath. There was a resubmission made on October 24th by Mr. Pucci, revised plans and reports that were submitted to the planning board, and the copies delivered to the planning board professionals. And there were considerable revisions that were made, and those revisions were as a result of comments that this board provided to us on October 1st, and your professionals provided to us on October 8th. And not to list all of them, but by way of an outline, the circulation across the rear of the buildings was made 2-way. The building size, originally there were 2 buildings, and it was reduced to a single building. The size of the building was reduced from about 32,000 square feet down to about 29,000 square feet. The depth of the building was reduced by 10 feet. the development was shifted forward about 5 feet closer to the highway. And that resulted in the building now being 127 feet from the property line, and it created a buffer where the ordinance requires 50 feet of 90 feet in all locations except where the dumpsters are, and the dumpsters are built into walls, and they're 80 feet. So 80 feet is now the separation between that's the open space between the nearest residential property line and the beginning of any improvements on our property, and it's another 10 feet for everything other than the dumpsters. We also provided a full traffic circulation plan. We were asked to relocate the loading area to the rear side of the building, and that was done. We were asked to reconfigure some of the parking, going from 90-degree parking to angled parking, and there was a number of traffic improvements that we were asked to add to the plan. And all of that after the revisions that were made for the October 1st meeting, and all of that after the revisions that were made to accommodate the DOT a redesign. What I'm going to ask Mr. Pucci to do is, if we just kind of go through this one item at a time and just describe the revisions that you made to the plan. So if we could, let's begin with let's begin with the retail building. I gave by way of an outline, now I'm asking that you testify. Size of the building is now proposed to be?
29,160, I believe.
And the depth of the dimension of the building was reduced by?
10 feet, from 100 to 90.
That additional 10 feet, the building area that was removed, where did you use that extra 10 feet?
We were able to pull the limit of disturbance towards the Stone Ridge Road homes 10 feet closer to the highway. So it was added to the buffer.
I just indicated that that buffer is a full 90 feet except where the dumpsters are, and at the dumpsters it's 80, is that correct?
That is correct.
And there's certain design criteria for the dumpsters that you were asked to abide by, and have the plans been revised to show those?
They have, and there are some comments in a review letter that mention additional clarifications that will be accommodated.
With regard to landscaping, there were requests that we add landscaping throughout the parking lot. Have you done that?
We have, and we'll continue to work with the professionals to their satisfaction.
We noticed in the new report there was a request for some additional landscaping along the road frontage. Any issue complying with that request?
Same answer. We'll work with the professionals.
We were asked to redesign the signs. We were given actually specific sign details. Mr. Rob Larson, the architect, will describe those signs, but the sign locations and the size of the signs were changed in response to the comments of the board and the board's professionals.
The signs have been revised. They are compliant in size. There is the possibility of relief requested if one of the signs, the one at Route 18, Route 18 northbound, is permitted to be in the Route 18 right-of-way, but we have had a discussion with your planner and have agreed that that particular location, it will be the option A, the alternate location that's shown on the plan that was submitted to you on the property, not off of the property, thus eliminating that variance situation.
A unique situation where there's 60 feet of right-of-way from the curb to our property. There's 60 extra feet of right-of-way. So our property is, even when we're on the highway, we're 60 feet away from the highway, and we're asking for, subject to the DOT permitting it as part of that application, that our sign be in the right-of-way. If that's a decision that is for this board to make, we can either move the sign back to our property. It's just going to be very far away from the travel way on Route 18. If you could also describe the revisions that were made. There were some minor revisions to the parking configuration. 90-degree parking became angled parking. If you could identify where those revisions were made.
Immediately behind Building A, the 5,000 square foot convenience mart on the left side of this exhibit that you see, there was a drive aisle that was two-way behind the building, and there were 90-degree parking spaces. By following the suggestion of your professionals and reconfiguring it to be one-way heading in the left or northwesterly direction, the angled parking spaces then allow the drive aisle to be reduced in width, and therefore the island behind the parking spaces is now able to accommodate the loading zone, and the relocated loading zone will be out of the traveled way, out of all directional flow, but located in an appropriate location as suggested by your professionals, rather than its previous location, which was on the southeasterly side of Building A, adjacent to and closer to Building B. In conjunction with that, we were also able to relocate the proposed trash enclosure for Building A in that same island behind Building A and remove it from the grassed area between Building A and Foxborough Drive, which was also a comment of your fire marshal and your police chief back on the initial application submission back in April.
There are a number of, I'm going to say, minor design revisions, stop sign, stop bar,
Textured pavement.
textured pavement. All of the requests that were made of you, was your intention to incorporate them into the plan?
That is correct.
And to the extent that there are any continuing technical guidance from the board's engineer planner with regard to SAM, are you comfortable advising the board you can and will comply with those?
Yes.
There is if the board asked that, and the board's professionals asked that your office prepare turning templates for the anticipated vehicles that would come on the site. So we know we have an articulated vehicle delivering fuel, we have emergency vehicles that would come to the site, and we have trash removal vehicles. Did you generate those templates for the
We generated 4 separate turning template plans and submitted them through your planning department to your professionals. They were the large tractor trailer, a WB50 truck, a fuel delivery truck, a single unit truck, and the specific fire apparatus that you have in District 3 to make sure that that particular aerial platform truck can maneuver throughout the site. And we were able to document on the submitted plans that all of the requested maneuvers and necessary maneuvers for safe and efficient movement of those vehicles can occur throughout the site, onto the site from Route 18 and back out onto Route 18 from the site. And hearing the testimony and or questions and opinions of a few moments ago, what was done and was not expressed to anybody until I get a chance to speak is that the WB50 tractor trailer turning template shows that a tractor trailer cannot physically make a turn exiting onto Foxborough Drive, turning to the right towards Stone Ridge Road. The physical radii of the intersection design plus the existing median within Foxborough Drive prohibit such a maneuver, so a tractor trailer cannot physically exit in that direction. When Mr. Ray and myself met with the professionals of your board on October 8th, we discussed the specific discussions and requests during the public hearing about a physical impediment across the exit driveway towards Foxborough Drive, such as a crossbar. However, it was also agreed that such a physical impediment would not only prohibit a tractor trailer, but could prohibit a fire truck or a large ambulance. And therefore, the restriction of the radii prohibiting the tractor trailer from making such a turn would be a better compromise, not inhibiting the flow of emergency vehicles.
The templates that you just described in your testimony are the same templates that Ms. Drum identifies on the first page of her November 19th memorandum as the templates that she reviewed.
That is correct.
A couple of other comments from Ms. Drum. The loss of the 3 extra parking spaces doesn't create an issue, according to Mr. Ray. I trust that you have the same opinion.
I do.
And there's also a request that any rear door, any man door in the rear of the retail building, each and every rear door have a bollard behind it so that there can't be an inadvertent opening of the door into the travelway, and also so that a vehicle cannot come into the vehicle cannot inadvertently hit the building at the back. So agree to put the bollards?
Absolutely.
At each and every door as requested? There's also an indication that the text that was suggested for the truck controls was a little ambiguous. It's indicating that the text that was chosen seems to give a mixed message. I'm going to ask if that you would agree to work with Ms. Drum to come up with clear, clean language that restricts the turning movements out onto Foxborough Drive.
Yes.
Just for the record, amongst the 5 reports that were provided to the applicant for this hearing was a report that was generated by Keith Brennan, Fire and Building Inspector, who found the plans as submitted to be satisfactory. We also have a report from Thomas Hart, our fire marshal, that was issued on November 20th. He has a comment that there's a fire hydrant missing. Would you stipulate that that fire hydrant will be placed on the plan as requested?
He actually is just asking for me to relocate one that's in the bottom right corner of Building B to another location. Wherever he wants it, he will get it.
Okay. And Mr. Hart's report says all of my other concerns have addressed satisfactorily at this time. We were asked to accommodate bicycle traffic and to include bicycle racks. You included a bicycle rack design in your details. Would you share with the board the 2 locations that we propose that bicycle racks be installed on the site?
There is one shown on the plan right now in, again, the same location as the fire hydrant. That is the bottom right corner or the southeast corner of Building B. Building B being the large building, and as you're zooming in, it's just off to the right. Okay, there is a concrete pad. It actually says proposed concrete pad, if I can read that. Okay, right there. That right where your mouse was just circulating, there is a pad there for the bike racks that would be located there. Now, leaving that view just as you had it, we do not have one shown currently at Building A. If one is desired, one can be placed in that island to the left of the big tree, really. There's plenty of room between the sidewalk right there where the shrubs are. The shrubs can just be moved, and if you'd like one at Building A, we can add one there. We'll work with your professionals wherever they deem it appropriate.
And no issue at all with bike racks being accommodated as suggested?
That's correct.
And just for the record, at the last meeting, we were asked to stipulate the number of stores, and we indicated that this number of stores would be 5 or more, and that was an important representation with regard to your parking calculations. Notwithstanding the reduction of the building size to 29,000 square feet, we still stipulate that there will always be a minimum of 5 stores in the center. We're also asked to stipulate that the maximum square footage of restaurant space would be capped at 30% of the retail building. We made that representation the last time, and I have been authorized to repeat it this evening. We're asked to introduce sidewalk along Foxborough. If you could just take us through the sidewalk that has been installed. Or has been
Just
designed.
sliding this picture to the right. Perfect. That right there, where the words Foxborough Drive are in white, move to the right a little bit, you'll see a tan-colored strip. That is the sidewalk extension. We're proposing a crosswalk across our driveway. We had previously committed to providing a sidewalk from our site up to Stone Ridge Road. And at the request of your professionals, we've extended that through a crosswalk across our driveway, wrapping around behind, as you see, going down the page to cross then the reconfigured entrance from Route 18 North onto Foxborough Drive. There will be a crosswalk at a stop-controlled stop sign and stop bar there. That sidewalk will then continue through the pork chop island, if you will, right there, and then terminate at the crosswalk of Route 18, the existing crosswalk of Route 18. So we're providing a sidewalk connection from the existing crosswalk up to Stone Ridge Road.
I think we've gone through the physical revisions that you've made to the plan. To the extent that you recall any details or design criteria that I've missed, invite you to help me out.
Right, stop right there. Up at the top of the upper left corner of Building B, there was a slight reconfiguration of the end of that island that was undertaken at the request of your professionals. That island I previously spoke about where the loading zone for Building A, and I just mentioned we could add a bike pad for Building A. That island was extended to the right a little bit, and there was a stop sign added across the back of Building B so that trucks and/or cars and/or emergency vehicles, anyone who comes in from Route 18 and rides the perimeter of the site would stop at the edge of Building B. Just a minor reconfiguration as requested by your professionals. And in conjunction with that and converting the back of Building A, that one drive aisle, to be going in a left or northwesterly direction, that addressed a previous concern of your professionals about conflicting movements and/or site distances for cars that previously would have traveled to the right or to the southeast, Building A. So that's really the only other significant design consideration.
I did find two more. Bill, the light stanchions, the light poles were reduced in height at the request of the professionals, if you could. I think we
Well,
went from a 25 to a 20-foot
That was,
pole.
I believe, I testified to that last hearing, maybe even the one before. The original submission of plans back in April showed 25-foot on the detail of the mounting height of the light, even though the actual lighting plan specified that they were at 20. So that was a typographical error on the detail sheet, but the light poles are requested to be installed at 20 feet high. The ordinance limits them to 18, so we are seeking a waiver from that design standard and continue to seek that waiver so that we can adequately light the site without putting in too many poles. And that 18-foot is consistent with other developments along both Route 18 and Route 9.
There was a comment earlier on about the light design should be specific to avoid hot spots and dark spots with the 20-foot light poles as shown on here. Have you accomplished that in the lighting plan?
Yes, we have.
And can you testify that the light fixture that's being used will not spill any light off-site? The lighting is strictly on
That is
the-
correct. There is a point-to-point distribution plan included in the submission. There are some comments in one of the professionals' reviews about inserting or making sure that house side shields are installed. They are on the plan already. There are other comments about altering the type of fixtures in the back, and we will look at that in conjunction with your professionals and our lighting professionals to make sure that we address the concerns satisfactorily. But we do show in the point-to-point distribution that we do not have light spillage off to the homes on Stone Ridge Road.
And I have two more, and they're landscaping related. We're asked to confirm that all of the dumpsters will be masonry and that they will be 6 feet high. There was some discrepancy on the plans. They want 6 foot high.
I mentioned that a few moments ago, that there's another comment in the review letter that we will take care of, and that is what we're speaking of, the 6 foot high versus 5 foot on the side and front. It will be 6 feet.
And landscaped around the perimeter.
That is correct.
There's also the last comment in landscaping that appears in Mr. Want's report recommends that there be additional landscaping incorporated into the area behind the area that separates the retail center from the residential community. Any issue at all with adding additional landscaping?
No, we will work with your professionals.
Very important. There's a suggestion that we revisit the area to see if berming can be accommodated. If you could share with the board why berming cannot be accommodated.
The area closest to the residential property line is a wetland and a wetland buffer. And so therefore, we cannot go in there and disturb the existing vegetation and remove it to create a berm and put new vegetation in. It's restricted from DEP rules.
But we can add the additional
We can
landscaping
supplement,
materials as
yes.
requested. We actually spent some time reviewing evergreens that are tolerant of the moisture, and there is a list that we've come up with, and we'll work with your professionals to include four-season evergreens that are water tolerant so they can handle those wetlands. I think that's the revisions.
That's all I can remember, yes.
Okay. You've received the total of 5 reports. There's The fire report,
Yeah, you have
received
to
a
speak a
total
little
of
louder.
5 reports. Keith Brennan's report,
Gesundheit.
Thomas Hart's report, Deanna's report, Venus Sawant's report, and the report of Rakesh Darji. Comfortable advising the board that you went through them thoroughly, and the remaining technical requirements that are brought. Oh, stormwater, there's lots in there about stormwater. It looks to me like you've satisfied, or come close to satisfying Mr. Darji. You will satisfy him?
Absolutely.
So comfortable that the remaining technical items in those reports you can and will address?
Yes.
Madam Chair, I have nothing further of this witness.
Okay, our professionals. Deanna, do you have anything? Yes, our engineer.
Madam Chair, thank you. Mr. Pucci in particular, a great deal of items in the letter, and a lot of the comments in the letter are technical kind of comments, I think. Thank you. Usually my voice carries pretty well, but most of the comments in our letter were pretty technical kind of comments, which I believe Mr. Pucci has agreed to accommodate. I did have one question, and I think we covered this a little bit at the last hearing, but just want to go back to it. Parking. The plans still note the parking to be based off of the 150, 1 per 150 square feet. That's just an oversight, right? We're sticking with the 1 for 250 square feet.
Caught me. It's a typo, sorry.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure.
Oh,
So,
no.
so there's no parking variance required. That's good. And then there are a couple of revisions with regard to lighting that we'd like to discuss. And Mr. Pucci said he'll, accommodate that, so that shouldn't be a problem. Our concern really was to make sure that we don't have not just spillage, but glare for the adjoining property owners. They're flat lens fixtures, so glare shouldn't be an issue. But there's some things that we can also do with changing the fixtures and some of the heads to enhance that even further. So we'll work with you on that. And then landscaping, the area in between that's now been increased by about 14 to 15 feet between the residents in the back and the curb line of the rear drive aisle. Since we do have that extra space, we'd like to see what we can do about beefing up that buffer. I know you show a nice dense canopy there, but it is a little sparse in spots.
Help me.
I'm talking about just that area that Damien's got zoomed in on behind the.
What's shown is light green now, which is basically where we've moved the wall successively
Oh,
away
Right.
from.
So that light green area, we want to plant it. Plant the heck out of
Sure.
it.
Plant
Okay.
that, sure.
That's all I have for Mr. Pucci, Madam Chair.
Our planner, Vina?
Good evening, Board. So there were a couple of comments I had made, but just to give you a background, after the last meeting, we met with the township professionals, met with the applicant's professionals to go over some of the concerns we had, mostly about circulation within the property, especially behind Building A. And after the meeting, the applicant has revised plans to address most of the concerns or recommendations we had, including moving the building further away from the residences, improving circulation behind Building A. Most of the comments were revising the signage, because originally there was a pylon sign that was proposed, and I had made recommendations that the applicant revise it to look more like a monument sign. I know there was a question about the alternate sign at the access along 18. The way our signage ordinance is written, actually, that sign, which will be within the right-of-way, would be treated as a billboard sign. In the past, too, we had issues. We are working on the signage ordinance. It will get cleared in future, but as of now, a sign in the right-of-way would be treated as billboard, and the board does not have jurisdiction over billboards. So I don't think this board can approve the sign in the right-of-way. One, it's in NJDOT's right-of-way. That was one issue. Most of our comments have been addressed. The only two things which actually pop out is, One, my initial comment about flipping the layout, and second is the landscaping along the northerly property line. At the last meeting, the applicant testified that this convenience store gas station is going to be a 24-hour facility. And after learning that, I feel even strongly about flipping the layout. And I understand the applicant has testified that as a marketing perspective, they would not prefer that the convenience store gas station be mid-block. Their preference would be to have it on a corner lot. But having a 24/7 facility so close to residences, I am not sure if that's sound planning. I'm not comfortable with it. I think there are a lot of advantages in flipping the layout. One most important being if the layout is flipped, the traffic generated from the gas station convenience store will be fed in directly onto 18. So the cars entering into the gas station and exiting will be mostly from 18, the access on 18. The only traffic that will go on to Foxborough Drive probably would be the residents of the Foxborough community or somebody who wants to go southbound on 18. So circulation-wise, I feel, and I'm not a traffic expert, I leave it to Deanna and Rakesh to fill in, but to me, that would be a better planning alternative. That would be safer. The concern I have heard from residents about trucks, probably we might be able to alleviate those concerns if the gas station was mid-block. So that was one of my comments. Plus, the retail building being closer to Foxborough Drive, people could just walk to the retail stores. Now that we would have sidewalks, we encourage pedestrian activity in that area. People can walk to the restaurants using those sidewalks. So that was my primary concern. The other one was like at the last meeting, I heard a lot about we can see Highway 18 from our backyard, and I wanted to verify that. So I actually had sent the planning staff to go around Stonebridge Road and see how it looks like from the backyard. And yes, there are few properties where you can see 18. So if the 24/7 facility is moved closer or is brought closer to the detention basin, probably they will be able to get away with the light or the noise that comes out from that use. Having landscaping along the northerly property line, I think is very, very important, is crucial. I know that the applicant has taken every effort to move the building further away from the residences, but I think adding evergreen, adding heavy landscaping along that area will buffer it further, because I know at least 2 or 3 houses from where I could see 18 from their backyards. So there has to be some sort of screening. I know there is a retaining wall, a modular wall that is proposed, but I think the maximum height goes up to 3.5 feet at 1 or 2 locations, but mostly it's like half a feet. So there needs to be some sort of screening. I think parking we already talked about, so there's no parking variance needed. I was confused when I was reviewing the plans because your site plan said something else. Signage we covered. I think there's a refuse area detail that was missing, and Mr. Pucci and I spoke about it. We would like to see that. We would like to work with you with the landscaping plan if approved. And that's pretty much it from my end.
Okay, thank you.
Mike, just one clarification. I think we're in full agreement on the landscaping along the northern border. I mean, we have additional lands that became available by moving the building forward, and all of that light green area that's along the northern edge of the property will as I think, landscape the heck out of it. We'll work with you on that. As far as the relocation of the 2 buildings, we simply
disagree with your conclusions, and the placement of the buildings is not in any way violating any of the ordinances. They're permitted uses. The dimensions and sizes of the buildings are as permitted, and the 24-hour operation is expressly permitted as long as the applicant stipulates to 2 points, and I'll make those stipulations on the record. The overnight operation requires 2 outside workers. There will be 2 outside workers. The overnight operation requires a security officer or a security system approved by the chief of police. We'll agree to have a security system in place approved by the chief of police.
Okay, anybody on the board have any comments or questions?
Yeah, I have a question.
Yes.
Again, regarding the egress onto Foxborough Road, the testimony was that the radii limits the truck traffic, the larger truck traffic.
WB50 truck, yes.
Yes. And I see basically by that median that's on the drawing. Is that a curb height median, or is it a higher?
Curb, it's an existing curb.
Okay, so what is going to prevent a larger truck from just riding up and over that curb to make the exit?
If a WB50 wants to drive over a curb, he will.
Is there any way to increase the height of that to prevent?
That's up to your engineer because it's your road.
But there's no problem doing that if that was directed.
As long as
When you say it's our road, I'm talking about the egress from the parking lot going to Foxborough.
That's on your property.
median that exists in Foxborough Drive is the one that prohibit the turn. And as
No,
long
not on Foxborough. I'm talking about the small one in the parking lot where
that we have no problem. We can do
That's
whatever
curb height.
your professionals. If Mr. Dargy would like it higher, absolutely. But
to
it's
prevent the trucks
one-
from riding up and over it to get out
One that you would also have to go over is the one that exists today in Foxborough
on
Drive.
Foxborough, yeah.
And Mr. Shapiro says, okay, we'll increase that too.
Yeah, no, I'm not talking about that. I'm just specifically referring to the one in the parking lot that separates the ingress and egress, the 2 separate lanes. Okay.
Can be
Anyone
done.
else? Any questions? Yeah, just to talk about what our planner did, because I know initially she did suggest that flip, and which I thought made some sense. And then when I saw it reappear in her notes for this meeting, I thought, oh, that you must have agreed to it, because she was, analyzing it a bit. But unfortunately, that's not what happened. And I understand you're saying from a marketing point of view. I mean, we have a lot of gas stations that sit in the middle of a block. I mean, right on Route 9, we have 2 of them. So it's not a standard marketing thing. I mean, it's your preference, but that's not necessarily.
My opening remarks are the applicant is a sophisticated retail operator operating retail facilities around the country. And this is the optimum design, and this is consistent with the ordinance in all respects.
Difference of opinion. Okay, no one else, we'll open it. Do you have more witnesses now?
I do have one more witness. I have our architect and planner to do the architecture of the building, the plan, there's the signage design, and there is a single variance that's created by us moving the buildings forward.
All right, do you
Would
want
I
to?
ask, if I may, Chair, if it's not, if I could just have a 3 to 5 minute recess with Mr. Pucci and with Mr. Rob Larson.
Okay,
Acceptable?
we'll take a 5-minute recess and then come back for your last
Go
2
right back to
witnesses.
work. Go- Very good. On purpose. Are you getting it? Oh, sorry. I'll help you. Yeah, just for a second.
All right, Mr. Pape, you want to call your next witness?
Sure, and before I do, we've been working off of the electronic screen, and it's all of the testimony of Mr. Pucci and Mr. Ray was looking at the electronic version. There is a hard paper copy of that plan, and I think it would be appropriate to mark it into evidence. Mr. Pucci, if you could read the title block of that plan that you've been testifying from.
It is a preliminary and final site plan, and it represents the current iteration of the same preliminary and final site plan, which was introduced at the last hearing in October.
And the last date, the revision date on that plan is?
November the 13th, I believe.
So we would ask that the rendered site plan from which Mr. Pucci has testified and Mr. Ray has testified be marked into evidence as A6. Thank you.
And the date, just to clarify, the date of that was what?
November.
Thank you.
Okay, before, Mr. Hart, did you have anything? I'm sorry. Okay, you're okay? Okay.
The third professional witness is Mr. Rob Larson. He is an architect and a planner. He's not yet testified with regard to this application, so after he is sworn, we'll share with you his credentials.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
State and spell your name for the record, please.
Sure. Robert Larson, Larsen.
Mr. Larson, please take a few moments to share with all of us your professional and educational background.
Sure. I'm a licensed architect and professional planner here in the state of New Jersey. I hold a degree from New Jersey Institute of Technology, Bachelor's of Architecture, achieved in 1997. I'm a member of the firm Chester Palusis Lasowski, based in Matawan, where I've been for 21 years and practiced in both capacities. I've testified in front of this board many times in both capacities.
We'll accept your.
For the record, Mr. Robert Larson's credentials include planning and architecture, and the board has accepted his expertise in both of those fields, Madam Chair.
Okay.
Thank you. Are you responsible for the design of the building that will be presented to the board this evening?
I am.
And did you similarly design the signage that you'll be presenting to the board?
I did.
I'm going to ask if you could begin by the exhibits that you intend to rely upon, beginning with A7, if you could have them marked so that we can go through them smoothly when the time arrives.
As A7, and dated with today's date, are the color elevations front and side of Building B, which is the retail building. Okay, so what I've noted as A8, dated today, are the front side and canopy elevation of the Building B, the convenience, the Building A, the convenience and gas station canopy. I have one more. Okay, and what I've labeled A9, dated today, 12/3/19, is the submitted signage plan, dated 11/14/19, noted as reissued for filing. This plan is a colorized version of the sheet submitted, which portrays the various signage proposed on site.
Mr. Larson, I'm going to ask if you could go through your testimony with the following plan. If you could first describe the architecture of the buildings, describing colors and materials that are proposed, and the overall height of the buildings. And then if we could go to the signage, similarly, the size, dimensions, overall height, materials, and then we'll go into the planning testimony for the variance.
Sure, as been discussed throughout this entire hearing process, that we are proposing two structures. The Building A is a convenience and gas type structure, and Building B is a 29,160 square foot retail structure that will be broken up into, as has already been testified multiple times, at least 5 separate stores. So in terms of architecture, this is a one-story structure. We're going to speak to the retail building now. It is our intention to bring a little bit more of a contemporary look with a variety of metal panels, stucco, trim detailing, as well as flexible storefront. I would note, obviously, we all go to retail centers, we see storefront. We want it to be flexible to permit this building to be demised into a variety of tenants. And as you can see from this architecture, we have broken it up into, this actually reflects 12 smaller tenants. That's not always going to be the case, where we would combine perhaps a few of these areas and forms to call out larger tenants should they come in. You can see that the architecture is carried to the side of the structure where we would, again, continue the treatments that we have. That would continue around the rear as well. And again, this is producing what I think is just an attractive, somewhat more modern looking building. And this architecture, as we're going to take a look at A8, is proposed to continue onto the smaller convenience type structure. The ultimate design of this will continue to be developed, but it is our intention to use those materials, those that look, that scale of the forms that the buildings would complement each other and make sense on the site. In terms of height, this is a zone that permits, I believe, 4 stories, 48 feet. We are rivaling nowhere near that. These buildings are at their maximum about 28 feet, if I'm not mistaken, to the highest point of any form. They're shown with flat roofs. Again, these are very typical for a retail architecture, and I think are proposed to be somewhat, hopefully more than somewhat attractive for this location. To go very quickly to the signage, we are proposing, first and foremost, signage that is compliant except for the canopy signage, which I'll get into in a moment. As has been mentioned, we are proposing a monument sign up on the Route 18 frontage. Considering Ms. Sawant's comment, we cannot and will not propose this first sign location, so we are proposing it to be located on our site at this point. It is the sign that is 12 foot long and 12 feet high, meets the area and height and physical size requirements of the ordinance, and is permitted. It is our intention that it would not only have the name of the center, some of the tenants, and as well as that we would have the digital pricing for the gas station. Just to note, if you remember all the way back in the beginning, we were proposing a sign also that was a freestanding sign on the corner just to meet the needs of the gas station. Your planner suggested she didn't like that. We didn't want that there. We've removed that, and we've incorporated into the compliant sign that will be up on Route 18. You can see that the treatment of this sign is purposeful. It is meant to echo the treatment, the colors, the materials that are on the building, and it will do so in its design and construction. The second sign over here at the Foxborough Drive access is shown here as freestanding sign B. This again is going to speak to the name of the center with a couple of perhaps the larger tenants noted. Again, with the same complementary materials. It is compliant at half the size, actually less than half the size of the main sign. It's 8 feet long and 6 feet high. Again, compliant with your signage ordinance. The eventual tenants that will be along this frontage, noted with this D in a bubble, whether we have 5 or 6 or 8 or 10 tenants, they are to comply with a maximum of 15% of the facade of that storefront, very typical way of doing facade signage size. So we're proposing that. Right now we're proposing it to be mounted on the building, obviously on the side facing Route 18, and to be no larger than is permitted by your ordinance and put on a per tenant basis. As I briefly mentioned, as is typical to convenience store gasoline station combinations, they would like to have a sign permitted on the canopy corner. This is not permitted in your ordinance. We are seeking that relief. It will, we feel, increase the viability of both this gas station, but also the recognition of this gas station in terms of seeing it and noting that that is where people are able to go. That is really it from a signage standpoint and an architecture standpoint. I don't have as much depth as my partner, I guess, but
Perhaps if we could return A6, or we could return A6 electronically to the screen, there is variance relief that the applicant is requesting. It's essentially the variance relief that's triggered by increasing the green area behind the building. That green area came from somewhere, it came from the front green area. And if you could describe the variance, and then if you could indicate from a planning perspective the benefits of granting the variance.
sure, there is a variance required for the 75-foot buffer from an arterial, which is Route 18, along this frontage. Considering this is in the EDO3 zone and is filed prior to current versions of that zone and that buffer requirement, it is required to be 75 feet. It is also not permitted to have parking within it. So we are asking for a variance for a 25-foot setback and parking to thus be within it. Just for the board's information, which I believe you already know through your own professional's report, the current EDO zone requires a 25-foot buffer. So under current standards, while we are not under them, your ordinance has already sought to remedy what was an excessive buffer along this arterial. And as Mr. Pape noted, if there was a larger distance envisioned in that 75-foot buffer requirement, we happen to have an extra 60 feet of landscaping, creating a natural physical separation from the traveled way of Route 18 to there. So in my opinion, considering the fact that we've actually moved this, at our previous application, we were asking for relief down to 30 feet. Tonight, we're asking for relief down to 25 feet. It's been reduced because of our efforts to continue to pull away the development that we're proposing from this residential. We are required to have a 50-foot buffer back there, and as you've heard through various testimony, we've moved the building back to 127 feet and widened this area from even more to be 80 and 90 feet deep. So from a planning perspective, in my opinion, realizing that we have all of this extra natural right-of-way, that your current ordinance requires much less than is enforceable under this application for that 75-foot buffer, and the fact that we're actually then able to benefit by having a much larger buffer to the residences, I just feel it's a better planning alternative to be pulling this development forward to that.
Just to make certain that all of the listeners follow, we had an obligation to have a 50-foot green buffer at the back of the site. That's what the ordinance requires?
That's correct.
And we're at 80 feet where the two little dumpsters are, and we're 90 feet everywhere else. Is that correct?
Yes.
And the part of that green space was created by our client reducing the size of his building and the depth of his building. Is that correct?
That is correct.
The balance of that land that's back there that's added to the 50-foot buffer, we're asking to remove from the green buffer along the highway so that we can transfer it to the rear. Is that correct?
That is correct.
We're not asking for this variance relief to increase the size of the footprints of the building. In fact, combined with this relief, we're reducing the building sizes.
Yes, and just as a note, if I may add, we are well below the permitted coverages, floor area ratios. We don't even come close to any of those things in terms of intensity.
And that unusual condition of the State Highway 18 having an enormously wide right-of-way so that there's a 60-foot right-of-way separation from our property line to the travelway on Route 18 only further enhances the relief that we're requesting.
That's correct.
I have nothing further of Mr. Larson. And Madam Chair, that concludes the direct presentation of your applicant.
Okay, our professionals, Dina.
I'm just trying to put my words together because I think this is my chance. I want to combine what I said before too. But one, I'm looking at the color renderings for the first time. And I'm a little disappointed, I would say, with the elevations. I was hoping to see more variety of building material, like some stone, some emphasis on the entrances to these stores. I have worked with Mr. Pape on other projects too. I have seen real nicer buildings that are being built or that are being coming up. And I hate to keep going back to what I said about flipping the layout, but the way I look at this project is, I feel that this could be an asset. It could be a project where people walk to, feel safe walking to. Having these buildings closer to Foxborough Drive, having them more attractive or more inviting will only encourage people to walk in this area, no matter how much you disagree. But there's always some sort of negative connotation associated or sort of fear associated with 24/7 gas station convenience store facilities, because most of the time the people that go to these facilities are passerbys. They are not really the next door neighbors who, there are, I'm not saying no. I mean, you can go and get your milk there, but if you have the retail buildings closer, if you encourage people to have, I know the applicant has put in sidewalks, the crosswalk was specifically asked, or the sidewalk was asked to be extended to the channelized island, because I had noticed that on the other side of 18, there's a sidewalk that actually goes into the Walmart property. The way I look at this project is I want people to walk. I want people to feel safer. And there's always this eyes on the street thing where when there are people walking around, people using the facility, you feel more safe. Having the 24/7 facility with the retail building, people walking to the restaurants, people walking to the retail convenience will make this area more safer. I think the residents' concerns with the 24/7 facility will kind of get alleviated or will lessen once these two, like the pedestrians and the passerby traffic, there's some sort of commingling of these two uses. So one, with the buildings, I would definitely want to work with Mr. Larson, if the project is approved, to come up with some alternative design, have some building texture, building material. Maybe the band that is towards the ground could be stone, could be made more attractive. The stores, right now you have, some of them have a feeling that they're projecting. Maybe those archways could be of a different material, but to make it more attractive. Again, I still feel that flipping the layout would be a better planning alternative, and I say this because Mr. Larson is the applicant's planner, and I was hoping to hear from him about the issue too. But I feel it is important to make the area feel and be more safer, encourage people to walk and use these amenities, I would say. That's it. The signage has been, they've worked on the signage, we're good with the signage. The only thing which I said earlier was that the sign cannot be in the right of way. We don't have jurisdiction over that, but otherwise, I mean, I would like to really work with coming up with a better design alternative.
That's why they make chocolate and vanilla, but we certainly have no issue at all. Mr. Larson just checked his ego at the door and said, "I'll gladly sit with Vina and work with her." Certainly, the buildings that were advanced were intended to be handsome buildings, but eyes in the person grading the papers is the one who has to be satisfied. So we have no issue at all. Mr. Larson, no issue?
Absolutely.
Yeah, no issue.
Our engineer, do you have anything?
I would defer to Vita.
Okay, Dina. And you don't have any comment? Okay. All right, and the board? No.
But the applicant has agreed to work, the applicant's architect will
For the
work with your
architecture.
planner to further enhance the architecture of the buildings, to create nicer, more color, more texture, more interest in the buildings. Okay.
Anyone else from the board have any comments?
I just have a question for Mr. Hart. Again, regarding the egress, I'm going to kind of kick back to that and my suggestion of raising the curb height in between the ingress and egress lanes. Would that affect your fire trucks at all?
If we have to go out that way or come in, some of the apparatuses will come in Foxborough Drive that come from Englishtown Road. If the curbing going into their site is raised, it could cause a problem for the tires and the rims.
Well, I would envision going in not being a problem. You know, it's the,
Well, their driveway is not as wide as you think it is.
Yeah.
With the island in the center. So
Okay.
we would have to stay close to the island to turn right into that driveway.
okay.
Now, most of the trucks coming in that driveway will be a 34-foot engine, where the aerial truck will come from Spring Valley and come in the Route 18 entrance.
You're talking the yellow trucks would be coming in.
Well, they're all yellow.
Are they all yellow?
All mine are yellow.
Okay. I thought I've seen some red ones.
There's different firehouses that'll come from different directions.
Okay.
So that's why you see us a lot of times ask for mountable curbs because of the turning radius.
Okay.
Raising it isn't such a great idea for me if I have to get in there. Okay?
Very good, thank you.
Okay, and I just wanted to comment on some of Vina's comments regarding the flipping. The advantages I see also, other than what she mentioned, is that where the access is off of 18, it would be much more convenient for cars to pull off there and into the gas facility than they have to go through almost the whole site in order to get to the gas station. So I think unfortunately it's going to encourage more use of Foxborough Drive to get to the gas facility. I know when I go in these big Wawas, I want the shortest way to the pumps. I don't want to wander around the whole site, you know. Also, I think that it would be just more conducive to people, as she said, walking, because they would walk to the stores. They're not going to walk to the gas station. And that's really primarily geared to people that are just traveling through. And I agree with the architecture. I think it's too blah. It needs to be pepped up and made more attractive. Anyway, so if there's no other comments from the board, we'll open to the public.
I just have one more question.
Oh,
How many
okay.
gas pumps would there be?
Oh, Mike? Fueling stations and pumps. There's 12 fueling positions. That comes out of 6.
6 pumps.
6
and
pumps.
12 positions, okay.
Okay, we'll open it to the public.
Good evening again, William A. Miller, attorney for Foxborough Homeowners Association. Mr. Larson.
Take the mic.
Yeah, we need the mic on.
Madam Chair?
With respect-
I'm sorry, just one point of clarification. Looking at the plan, it looks like there are 8 pumps, double-sided, so it would be 16 fueling stations. Just to clarify.
Eight and 16.
Apologies, 8 and 16.
Okay.
We're certain of that.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks for the clarification.
8 or 16?
Now, Mr. Larson, would you comment on the Foxborough Drive access, or would you defer to Mr. Pucci on that?
And Mr. Pucci's available for examination.
All right, but at this point, Mr. Larson is the architect, so with respect to the buffer, it doesn't say how high or how wide the buffer is, does it, on the plans? I don't know if you heard the comments of the township professional saying that some of the homes from Stone Ridge Drive can see Route 18. So it seems that the buffer is not complete, or that the buffer there would be no buffer allowing light to shine on those homes throughout the course of an entire night.
Not for the architect, but we agreed that we would landscape all of those light green areas. That's grass that had been created by moving the building forward, and we agreed that we would, I think the term that we're using, the term of art is landscape the heck out of it to the satisfaction of the township's professionals.
Right now, with respect to the lighting, though, this is a 24-hour facility, so there's going to be lights on all night, correct?
I believe, yes, and I also believe that there's been testimony that not only are we increasing the amount of landscaping in the buffer, and again, this is not for me, but as the planner, they are increasing the amount of landscaping, and they're working with the professionals and with the board's engineer to absolutely minimize any light spill off-site.
All right, and you would agree that light shining on the homes would be a detriment to their homes if it continued on a regular basis?
It's up for him to agree. If that's your position, you can place it on the record.
But with respect, if the landscaping is insufficient, then the lights would be shining on the homes, and it would be affecting their, or they would see it on a continual basis during the course of a night. Aren't there going to be lights at the back of the building, the retail facility? All right. I thought you were testifying about the lights at this point.
I'm offering no testimony about the lights on the.
Yeah, you can bring them up.
We'll switch then, if you don't mind.
We have both of you here. Hey there.
All set?
Lights.
Question about lights behind the building.
There are light poles behind the building that shine downward onto the driveway that is behind the building. The poles are placed on the Stone Ridge Road side of the driveway so that the fixtures are aimed towards the building, not towards the residences. And as I said before, they already incorporate house side shields, so there should be no spillage of light backward towards Stone Ridge Road. I also further agreed that I would work with Mr. Dargy to increase the landscaping and to modify as appropriate the types of light fixtures to ensure even less than no spillage towards Stone Ridge Road.
Now, directing your attention to Foxborough Drive, the access, isn't it true that there's been no change in the actual width of that ingress and egress?
Change from the
original
October
plans to this plan?
height, there has been no change in the width of the opening.
And I believe you testified that a tractor-trailer could not turn right, correct?
Did testify that I provided a traffic turning template to Mr. Dargy and to the entire board documenting that a WB50 could not make the right-hand turn.
But with respect to this facility, there's going to be various sizes of trucks making deliveries. And other trucks would be able to make that right onto Foxborough Drive. Smaller trucks, a box truck, a van, things of that nature. Would that be accurate to say?
Yes.
And so isn't there a provision or an ability to reduce the size of the access onto Foxborough Drive to allow emergency vehicles, but essentially prohibit commercial trucks from utilizing that means of ingress and egress?
No.
There is no way to reduce the size?
Not unless I can.
Fire trucks and ambulances.
I cannot discern between a box truck and a pumper truck. They both have about the same wheelbase and about the same length of vehicle, but I cannot prohibit one and allow the other.
But now there.
Signage is available and has been provided, and I've agreed to work with both Deanna Drum and Rakesh with their comments concerning modifying the signs to make them more clear and concise.
And now, isn't there going to be a sign on Foxborough Drive concerning this facility?
Sorry, could you repeat that?
I believe Mr. Larson testified that there would be a smaller sign on Foxborough Drive.
There is a shopping center, if you will, project sign, identification sign that Mr. Larson showed.
So in a sense, that would be contemplating then that traffic would be using Foxborough Drive to access the facility.
Is there a question?
Yes. Are you contemplating that some traffic will be utilizing Foxborough Drive to access the facility?
Yes.
And in what fashion are you going to limit it to automobiles rather than trucks, other than signs? Essentially, there is no impediment to a truck. Say they miss the turn on Route 18, they'll make the right onto Foxborough Drive and then they'll turn into the facility, correct? There's no impediment to that. There is none. So that is going to allow then any type of vehicle to access his facility from Foxborough Drive.
Not any type of vehicle. A WB50 truck can similarly not make the right-hand turn from Foxborough Drive through the one-way entrance driveway into the project.
All right, please.
All right. With respect to the rear of the facility, I noticed that there's arrows pointing in each direction, so you're contemplating two-way traffic at the rear of the facility.
That is correct.
And that the rear of the facility is also going to be accommodating the loading docks, which would mean that commercial trucks would be utilizing that portion of the surface area, correct?
Correct.
And then there is absolutely nothing then to prevent them from exiting onto Foxborough Drive.
That is incorrect.
What is going to prevent them from exiting onto Foxborough Drive? I don't see any provision in the plans that would block or limit the access of the truck to that area.
As has been testified numerous times, there is signage provided across the rear driveway if one is traveling in a northwest direction, prohibiting trucks from leaving onto Foxborough Drive. Also, as I have testified, there will be an inability for a WB50 truck to exit onto Foxborough Drive and turn in towards Stonegate. Beyond that, I did describe to you and to the entire board and professionals that when Mr. Ray and I met with the professionals and the discussion of potentially offering some sort of physical impediment across the exit driveway was considered and suggested by a member of either the board or the public at the last hearing, we collectively agreed that prohibiting a vehicle from leaving would not only prohibit a truck if you put a crossbar over the exit driveway, it would also prohibit a large ambulance or a fire truck, other emergency vehicles. So we collectively agreed that prohibiting emergency vehicles is not good engineering or sound planning, and therefore left it to the physical constraints of the radii of a truck exiting onto Foxborough Drive from the back of the property could not make a right-hand turn with a WB50 truck.
There's a legal element that we didn't put on the record, and there's a legal element we didn't put on the record, and we really should. Title 39 are the laws of the state of New Jersey that control traffic, and on private property, the property owner can ask the township's police force to enforce Title 39. That empowers the police force to come on the property and issue tickets for people who do not obey the traffic control signs. And I will, as we have a number of times in the past in Old Bridge, will agree to make that application to the police department and to your governing body to allow Title 39 to be enforced on the site so that all of the signage can be enforced by your police force.
All right. As I look at the plan itself, you have the arrows indicating traffic going in both directions onto Foxborough Drive, left and right. So you are contemplating that vehicles will be utilizing that particular means of ingress and egress, and people will be turning onto Foxborough Drive. Is that why the arrows are there?
As was stated previously by Mr. Ray, there are two outbound driveways, one for left turn, one for right turn, so that you did not have conflicting movements or an excessive queuing of vehicles, so that passenger vehicles wanting to return to their homes in Foxborough may do so without waiting for a passenger vehicle wanting to go southbound on Route 18, waiting for there to be an opening in the exiting driveway of traffic on westbound Foxborough Drive.
All right. At this point, I have no other questions for the witness, Mr. Larson or Mr. Pucci, but I know that unit owners will have other questions or comments at this point in time, Madam Chairwoman.
Hello, Carolyn Holguin, Holguin, 38 Ponderosa Lane. So at a previous meeting, I specifically asked what was the required number of entrances and exits into this facility, and I was told 1. So I get back to my initial question, why is it required that we have an entrance and an exit on Foxborough Drive?
Not a requirement that there be an entrance onto Foxborough Drive. We've constantly talked about the benefits of having the circulation plan that we've advanced and worked with your professionals, and that circulation plan relies on there being access to the traffic signal, as well as now ingress and egress directly from Route 18.
So as a resident, I use that every single day. That street was not designed to have commercial traffic. You have islands in the middle. A number of times when I return from work in the evening, cars are stuck there trying to make U-turns. You see larger vehicles trying to maneuver within there, going over those islands. And I understand you keep saying a sign will deter people from turning right. But I think everybody who lives in Old Bridge knows that the Walmart sign of not making a left is not very effective. And I imagine it will have the same benefit with Foxborough Drive, as well as if the curb doesn't allow for that turnage, what will happen when a tractor trailer chooses not to obey the sign and turns right? What kind of disaster will that cause in the neighborhood where you have children playing and participating? As well as, from what I understand, the traffic study might have been flawed as to when it was assessed at the peak times, as well as what the real traffic projections were. Has an independent traffic engineer assessment been done on behalf of the township?
We have a traffic engineer.
The board, ma'am, the board does have a traffic engineer. We don't hire her for every case. It actually, the applicant pays for it. But in this case, we did, Deanna Drum, she's been testifying. She is on behalf of the township. She does not work for the applicant.
Okay, and her assessment concurs with what's been presented here by the applicant?
We did not ask her to, nor do we usually ask them to go out and do their independent counts. They rely on the counts provided by the applicant. That's not something usually a traffic consultant for the town would do.
Okay, well, I think we really seriously need to consider what has been presented as part of the traffic assessment, and is it realistic of what Old Bridge is? Thank you.
Do I need to recite my name and address again?
Yes.
Stephen Backman, 17 Stone Ridge Road. Let's continue on the traffic. It is your testimony that you have this traffic pattern throughout the facility that will easily not create a traffic jam, according to maybe not your exact words, but something to that effect. So if that traffic pattern is so well planned and so well designed, why do you need it? Why do you need any egress or ingress from Foxborough Drive?
The answer is the site works better with the driveway to Foxborough Drive. It not only provides the neighborhood residents with access to and from the property, it also provides southbound traffic. Remember, we're providing a new southbound left turn lane in the median of Route 18. We've met with the DOT. They've agreed that's the way we're going to handle left turns onto Foxborough Drive rather than the inadequate jug handle.
Similar to the one on Ferry Road.
Similar. It's going to be a mirror image of the northbound left turn lane where
Okay.
you make a left onto Marlborough Road.
Okay.
So southbound traffic that wants to get into the site can use the left turn lane, make a left, and then make a right and get into the site from Foxborough Drive. It just makes the site work more efficiently and ultimately more safely.
Okay. That's one opinion. Again, I'm trying to respect the question and answer before we get to the comments. Mr. Pucci just testified that there is no restriction to any size vehicle, regardless of his templates of vehicle size, nothing to restrict any size vehicle from turning right onto Foxborough Drive. That is a corner where there are school buses, kids, high
But that
levels
is
of
not
traffic.
what I said.
I think he didn't say that.
You said there was a sign. There's no physical barrier.
I said twice now that there is an inability for a WB50 truck to make the right-hand turn from the exit driveway heading towards Foxborough Drive to the right or to the northeast onto Foxborough Drive because of the existing median within Foxborough Drive as well as the curbs of our access driveway.
But there are also bridges around all parts of the country that say 10 feet, and 11-foot trucks and higher constantly go under them. So it's still, there's nothing to prevent them from making that turn, and they make the mistake, and then they're stuck, and then you're concerned about emergency vehicles getting through. Will only have to get through there to tow that guy out of there because they can't make the turn. In the meantime, it's creating a traffic blockage and traffic hazard. Number two, I'd like to move on because I think that subject is beat to death, and I think the point has been well taken.
Did you want to respond?
We would like to respond to that.
They'd like to respond.
Mr. Pucci's firm designed Foxborough Village when it was built. I don't know how many years ago, Mike, you tell me. It was
78.
Okay. The street network back there was purposely made discontinuous. Would you agree with that? There's a
Yes.
lot of twists and turns.
Yes.
There's no benefit for a truck to turn right and go into the neighborhood.
But they don't know that. They don't know that. They don't know that. We have that problem. We've been living with that.
If they do it once, they'll never do it again. It's,
But that's everybody.
all right. Trucks aren't going to do that. There's no benefit to them doing that. It's a bunch of twists and turns and a series of turns to get out to Ferry Road. There's no reason for them to do that.
I need to respond to that, please, just very quickly, and I wouldn't want to move on as much as you do. Right now, the traffic on 18 is horrendous in the mornings. It is backed up all the way to the new traffic signal by the Walmart. It is just standing still. Sometimes you have to wait three or four traffic light changes to get out of Foxborough Drive onto 18. The people that can't wait, which is most of New Jersey drivers, they cannot wait for the light on Ferry Road, which is what's creating most of the traffic. They cannot wait for that light to change. So they either go on the shoulder to try to bypass the traffic, or more often than not, they turn on to Foxborough Drive, and then they discover they can't get out. These are not one or two people that come and they're familiar with the road. This is the public that is driving thousands of people per day. There is no way this argument can actually be believed. Now, come on, give me a break. We're using common sense here. Let me go on to the next thing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. The next thing is regarding a physical barrier. I don't know about you, but I've been to many malls, and a lot of malls have low parking decks. There are physical barriers that prevent fire trucks and ambulances and other emergency vehicles from getting in and out of there. And again, I'm going back to Mr. Pucci's traffic design. Since it's going to be so effective, there's no reason why the gas truck wouldn't be there delivering gas, or the delivery trucks wouldn't be blocking the lanes in the back of the buildings, that the police and fire and ambulances couldn't just take his traffic pattern right back out onto 18. So if all of that is taken into effect, you still don't need that exit onto Foxborough Drive. Because as he testified, this is a very effective plan that he went over with all the traffic professionals, or the township professionals, might I be more specific. My question is, does it really work? I don't need an answer, okay? And as far as truck height, now, this gentleman can verify, I'm sorry, I don't know your name, but you can verify, to my knowledge, most emergency vehicles are no larger, there are some, but they're no taller than 10 foot 6 inches, okay? There might be some that I'm not aware of, but the majority of them are not. Certainly ambulances aren't. That is typical box height for the EMTs or emergency people to walk in with a stretcher and its standing height inside. Why there can't be a barrier is beyond my comprehension. Again, it might exclude, well, let me finish this. The height on the emergency vehicles, which I said are generally no more than 10 foot 6 inches, but box trucks and tractor trailers are typical 12 feet and larger. So if they put a barrier at 10 feet, or 10 feet 6 inches, most emergency vehicles will be able to get through. And going back to the efficiency of the traffic flow that has been testified numerous times, they should have no problem getting out. It's been testified to that the gas truck won't impede traffic. Don't ask me how that can happen, because it's in the flow of traffic. And it's also been testified that the delivery trucks will not impede the traffic behind the building. I don't know how that's going to happen. Okay, so we're going to go on to another subject, please. And the next subject is lighting. Okay, Mr. Pucci, is it you're the person to address lighting?
Yes.
Okay. How many pole lights are there on the plan, approximately?
Approximately, maybe a dozen.
Is that all for a property that size?
I said approximately.
Okay. Let me not ask that question. Okay, because we need more accurate. Okay. Sorry about that. I didn't mean to be wise about that.
All right, ask your question.
Okay, my question is this. Is it not correct that the typical light heads of our LED fixture heads are being used? Is that correct?
This project proposes LED light fixtures.
Okay. Does it also include LED lighting on the building as required by UCC code?
I am not an architect. I cannot testify to any lighting on the building.
Yeah, Rob can.
At all of the entrances as required, as whatever the building code requires for safe recognition of people at the doors, for safe operation of the doors will be provided on the building, which is
And the
all-
rear doors as well.
Wherever rear doors are
Okay.
proposed.
And is there and there's LED lighting in the canopy over the pumps? Is that correct?
Within the canopy over the gas pumps, yes.
Yes. And there is also lighting in the pumps themselves. Is that correct?
Internal lighting for illumination of the display of cost and purchase, yes.
And there is lighting on the building for signage. Is that correct?
Yes.
And there is lighting for signage out by the road, as you testified. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes?
Monuments are illuminated.
Okay.
Yes.